Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this introduction to the ANSYS Startup Program um, offered by CADFEM Switzerland. This WebEx meeting will be recorded, and you can ask questions at the end when I stop the recording. My name is Aniko Rakai. I am an account manager here at CADFEM Switzerland, and I will shortly explain to you the ANSYS Startup Program and how it works by CADFEM Switzerland. So our agenda today, first I will talk about disruptive innovation and simulation, so why we think that it's really important for a startup or any company who is developing a product to use simulation and something which we like to call a virtual prototype. And I will give you two examples from our clients here in Switzerland. Then I will talk shortly about CADFEM, our company, and ANSYS, the software which helps you to create these so-called virtual prototypes. And at the end of the presentation, I will talk about the ANSYS Startup Program and explain how it works exactly in detail, step by step. And I will give also, again, examples from Switzerland, from startups that are working with us to develop their products. So when we talk about disruptive innovation and developing a product which is really different from others and which makes a surprise, I like to use this example from our director here in Switzerland, which just shows the timeline of the fan development. So the first fans were developed at the end of the 19th century. And then probably all company which was developing them was saying that they were innovating the design and they were really changing the concept of the fan. But if we compare how fans looked like 100 years ago and even today, well, we see very, very similar designs. And then some 10 years ago, James Dyson decided to really revolutionize fan development. And this is what you see here on the right side. It's still a fan, it's still moving air, but you don't see the same design anymore. So to be able to change the design in a disruptive way, in this way, he was using heavily simulation to really understand the product, understand the physics behind the product, to be able to design something which is completely new and completely different. And I like to use this example for startups because I'm sure you also want to revolutionize your product and you want to do something which is completely different. And for that, you definitely need simulation if you don't just change a little of the design which you have been producing for over 100 years. So here what you see is fluid dynamics and understanding the air flow. Another example which comes from Switzerland is of course typical from Switzerland. So Switzerland is famous for precision watchmaking. Another way to use simulation for product development is optimize the design, for example, the spring of a watch. And here you see an example how from the initial design this spring was developed to be the optimal design. And what makes it really very interesting for us, and it's not only the technical but also the aesthetic requirements which have to be optimized. And in the end, you see here on the final watch that this spring is even visible on the watch. And so this was also made possible by simulation to avoid prototyping, which for an expensive Swiss watch would of course be very expensive. Another example, which is very different from the physics point of view, because now we are talking about electromagnetics, is an example of the Kopter group, how they were using simulation to ensure interference-free operation of the antennas placed on the helicopter. So nowadays we are surrounded by antennas and everything is emitting signals and receiving signals. And you just want to make sure that there is no interference in the design. And again, this is something which is much easier by simulation. You can really reduce the time needed to ensure that the placement of the antenna is the safer possible for this helicopter. So these were just a few examples to give you a motivation on product development, to give you a motivation to move out of your comfort zone when you are trying to improve your product. And what we think here at CADFEM, what we see a lot with startups, that you have a lot of incubators, you have a lot of advice for business and how to sell your product. But it's just nice to have also a partner for the product development from a technological point of view. So this is where CADFEM comes into the picture, and this is what I will explain next. So CADFEM is a company present in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland with more than 200 collaborators, a family business and a partner of ANSYS since more than 30 years. And we are basically an engineering office doing simulation, so that's what we do every day, simulation to do product development. Here in Switzerland, we help to implement the industry and academical partners simulation in their product development or in the education. We do also support for the product, which is very important, and training. And if you partner with CADFEM for your product development, what you get is not only the ANSYS software, which is very important, but also the experience of CADFEM of more than 30 years with more than 100 engineers who know how simulation can effectively help in product development. And now let's quickly look through ANSYS also, because ANSYS is a software, a leader in simulation software, with more than 40,000 customers worldwide. So more than 3,000 employees, and here CADFEM, we are your local partner to use ANSYS. And if you look at the list of the Fortune 100 companies, for example, almost all of them are using ANSYS and simulation to develop their product. Of course, something which a startup says often is that, okay, we are too small, we don't have the same resources as these big companies, but this is why there is the startup program of ANSYS. And even if you are a startup, you should dream big. So maybe in a few years you will become one of those 100 companies, 100 Fortune companies. So you will want to use the best tools possible to develop your product. So I took an example of a pump just to show you all the simulation platform of ANSYS, because sometimes people know only one part of the ANSYS product portfolio, but basically for every part of a product you will be able to use simulation. And we at CADFEM are here to help you to find the focus where the return on investment of simulation will be higher for you. But for example, if you talk about pumps, probably you would at first think of the flow in the pump, but you could also think of the magnetic fields of the motor which is driving the pump, or you could think of the electronics and this electronical interference of different electronics installed close to your pumps, even the control software and the embedded system. And then, of course, which comes to mind first is the flow, so the simulation of the flow and optimization in the pump, or the durability of the structure, and to make sure that you don't have a fatigue problem. ANSYS likes to talk about multiphysics because sometimes these physics talk to each other, and they have a coupling which is important and which have to be taken into consideration. And the advantage of the simulation platform offered by ANSYS is that this is possible. So two physics can communicate to each other. This is what we call multiphysics. And here you see, for example, fluid structure interaction. Maybe some parts of your pump are affected by the fluid, but you have to consider it in the fatigue of the part. And then finally, there is also a system solution in ANSYS. So it's also possible to couple all of these to reduce the models, the so-called reduced order modeling, and to put all together into a block system and simulate the whole design. Another thing which is important about the ANSYS simulation portfolio is that you have different tools for different parts of the design flow. So you have a part which is called ANSYS Discovery, which is really for the design, for the beginning of the development. Then you have the dissolver products, which are the most well-known flagship products like ANSYS Mechanical or Fluent, which are for the validation of the product. And then you have this integration of the system, which is called ANSYS Twin Builder. And all these can communicate to each other via an interface, which is called ANSYS Workbench. And so again, the message here is that you have this whole simulation platform. You can cover all of your product, but here at CADFEM, we are here to help you to find the parts which you need to simulate so that you don't spend too much time either on simulation, because of course, as a startup, you want to grow your business, you want to do other things. You cannot do only simulation all day long. So again, just to make you dream big, these are the industry-leading customers of ANSYS. And of course, every startup should have in mind to grow as big as they are, maybe not next year, but in a few years. So dare to think of these companies as well, and don't be afraid to really go into details about the product development and not only the business part, because this is what will let you be a reliable partner and a reliable producer on the long term. So, of course, when I talk to startups and we start a conversation, very often I hear again these objections that we are too small, that simulation is too expensive, that we are not experts. We prefer to outsource to companies which are expert in simulation. But this is exactly why ANSYS developed this startup program, and this is why we at CADFEM Switzerland are also partnering in this startup program to make it possible for a startup to use the simulation and really integrate it into the product development, because on the long term, this is what pays out. So now let's go to the details of the ANSYS startup program. So when we start a conversation, the first thing from your point of view, from a startup's point of view, is always to check if you are eligible to join the program. So you must be a privately held company. You cannot be a consulting or services company, so you have to have a product. You can't use a startup program just to become a consultant in simulation. You shouldn't be more old than 10 years. So at ANSYS, they realized that startups and startup is, of course, very different. Sometimes the timeline is a bit longer, exactly because you need to develop a very complicated product. So if you are not older than 10 years, you are still eligible to be called a startup. Well, there is just a maximum income which is allowed to be participant in the ANSYS Startup Program. But if you are eligible, then we can start to have a conversation on how to join the startup program here in Switzerland. Your advantages will be discounted access to all these ANSYS multiphysics simulation bundles, access to the customer portal of ANSYS, where you find self-guided support and tutorials, and also access to our support, so the support of CADFEM Switzerland, which means that you can call our support hotline and ask for advice from our engineers. And then you have the marketing partnership with ANSYS and also with CADFEM. So here in Switzerland, we organize events and conferences, and you can come and present your product, and you can participate in our LinkedIn campaigns, as was the case with those startups I am presenting here. So how does it work in practice? At the end of the presentation, you will be able to ask questions, or if not, then you can just write us an email. You saw my email at the beginning, or you find it on our website. And the first thing is always a phone call, so it will be probably from me or from another account manager here in Switzerland to understand the business plan, how you are planning to develop your product, and of course the product itself. And if we feel that there is a potential in developing your product by simulation, then we will set up a face-to-face meeting with one of our technology experts. So usually it's a meeting of about 1 hour where you present your product, you explain what are the challenges in the development, what are the things which you are not sure that will work when you do a prototype, or if the prototype worked the first time, you are not sure why it worked. And then this meeting is for free, so you don't have to pay for this 1 hour meeting with a technology expert. And then we will try to find really the case which can help you develop the product and identify how it exactly should be implemented. So we will suggest you tutorials or training, and then we will help you find the bundle which you need to be able to use simulation. So in the startup program, there are 3 bundles. It's very different from the commercial design of the licensing. There is a bundle for structural and fluids, there is a bundle for electromagnetics, and there is a bundle for embedded software. And in one of these bundles, you will have everything you need. So you will even have the CAD of ANSYS for geometry preparation. You will have access to HPC parallel licenses. So one bundle contains really everything which a startup might need to be able to start the simulation. So basically, this is all how it starts, and then you will have all the information you need to start your development, and hopefully you will be as successful as the 3 examples I will show you. So the startups in Switzerland with which we have already been working together. So we chose 3 startups with 3 very different profiles, and it's in alphabetical order. So the importance, there is no difference, different profile, different product, but they were all very, very interesting. So the first startup here, which I would like to talk about, is called 90 Labs. So they are developing carbon fiber 3D printer to enable the industry to print high volume carbon fiber composites. So it's a very, very interesting product. And they were using the ANSYS simulation tool to simulate advanced thermal process to make better products and to be able to better understand the development. So their idea is to make carbon fiber more accessible to anyone who wants to create. So it's a very, very interesting startup. And in the next slide, what you see is how they have been using ANSYS simulation. So starting with the thermal process simulation, understanding thermal histories between the layers, and then calculating the interlaminar strength criterion. So 90 Labs is one of the startups we have been working with for a while, and we wish them, of course, a lot of luck in the future development of the company, not only the product, but the company itself. So another interesting startup we have been working with is called Climeworks, who are trying to capture carbon dioxide from the air and are aiming to develop the world's first commercial carbon removal technology. So they are aiming something very ambitious and very important, of course. What if we could stop climate change from reaching dangerous levels? So again, it's a very different product, of course, very different challenges. How they were using the simulation tools from ANSYS. So they are using it to design the next generation direct air capture plants. And in the practice, in the next slide, what you can see is computational fluid dynamic simulation, which allows them to have fast-paced development cycles and to reduce the prototyping necessary for their next product. And the last example, which I would like to talk about, is a startup called KOMPACT, who is aiming to electrify industry with smart actuators. So again, a very different scale of the product, very different challenges. They would like to replace compressed air devices by their compact size sized actuators. And they were using the ANSYS simulation tools to reduce prototyping and accelerate time to market. So this is something you will hear very often, not only from startups, but from any other companies. And the concrete example on the next slide is just understanding the magnetic field of their electromagnetic field simulation of a linear electric motor. So three startups we have been working with in the past years, and three very different profiles, but three which were perfectly matching for the startup program and to the idea of the development by simulation. So if you are a startup from a different field, but with a product which is very technology intensive and where you think you could benefit from the startup program, then we invite you to grow your business faster with simulation, with CADFEM, with ANSYS. And at the end, I would just like to show a small summary of what you can take home from this presentation. So use simulation to move out of your product's comfort zone, to create something which is different, to be able to test more what-if scenarios, to be able to accelerate time to market. As a startup, it will be very important for you to be fast, to reduce prototyping costs, because of course you have to pitch all the time for investment. And as a final note, I would also like to invite you to impress your investors with the virtual prototype, because when you do your pitches, it can be very interesting and important to be able to show already your prototype. So that was it, which I wanted to say. I hope you found it interesting. If you would like to join the startup program, then you can just reach out for more information at info@cadfem.ch. So you can just write an email and we will set up the first phone call. And then I would like to thank you for your attention. I will stop the recording now. And